Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts.
Welcome back to The World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi everyone.
What have you been up to this week, Belle?
This week I got a sneak peek at an exhibition by one of the world's most successful travel and documentary photographers, Steve McCurry. He's best known for his portrait of Sharbat Gula, known as the Afghan Girl, which went global as the cover shot for National Geographic back in 1985. The exhibition, Steve McCurry Icons, is doing the rounds of the globe and was recently in Sydney and is now exhibiting at Seaworks in Williamstown in Melbourne's inner west until late May.
That's the shot with the girl with the amazing eyes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is really one of the iconic photos of the century, I think. And it's in the exhibition too. So I wasn't, it's so commercial, I wasn't really expecting to be moved by it. But McCurry is a man who has been blessed not only with skill, but impeccable timing. I mean, he was at ground zero in New York on September 11. He's documented the Gulf War, floods in India, and through that he shows joy, suffering, wonder. He really tapped into the humanity of these events. There were people crying in the exhibition when I went.
Wow.
So keep listening because we're going to share a tip from Steve about travel photography and getting that shot. So that was the highlight of my week, Kirsty. What about you?
Well, just to do a little bit of time travel for you, I'm actually in the Blue Mountains at the moment at a writer's retreat and have hopefully completed a big chunk of editing on my crime manuscript. So I'm going to get quite a bit done on the flight too, though. There's something about planes and trains that I just find really productive when it comes to writing. So I think it might be to do with being in one place and not able to move around and not having anyone like, aka children, asking me to do something.
Absolutely. Well, talking about planes, Turbli, which is a turbulence forecast tool, has released its latest research, which reveals the airports with the highest average turbulence. So you might not get so much work done. And it's very official. 150,000 routes were analysed to identify the most turbulent flight, and it also analysed 500 of the world's largest airports to discover which are the most jarring to fly into, using what's called a graphical turbulence guidance forecast and the UK Met Office cumulonimbus cloud forecast. Thanks for giving me those words to say. Good script writing.
And these findings are really important because for those who struggle to cope with turbulence when they fly, this could effectively change where you go. So actually, a pilot once explained to me that turbulence is like potholes in the road. And while I'm not a nervous flyer, I have actually passed that on to others who are. And they've said that they've actually found that really helpful. So if you imagine that when you have a little drop, that it's just like a little pothole in the road going over in your car, then it's sort of somehow mentally makes it not so bad. But I actually haven't, though, ever been in a plane where the turbulence has been so bad that I've lifted up off my seat or anything. So I think that would be a different story.
Yeah, I'm a pretty calm flyer too. Though I don't want to upset the gods of the sky, but my worst flight was actually from Adelaide to Melbourne. The plane bucked like a mule. Everyone was swearing at the top of their voices. It was not fun. But now, please return to your seats and buckle up for the world's most turbulent airports. And the most turbulent to fly out of is, are you ready? It is Santiago in Chile. And I've flown in and out of Santiago a few times. Glorious, glorious views of the Andes if you get the right approach. But for me, every time it's been pretty smooth. It was followed by Sendai Airport in the Japanese city of Notori.
And third on the list of the world's bumpiest airports went to Wellington. Poor Wellington, New Zealand's capital, that's often referred to as Windy Wellington. And I've actually lived in Wellington, and I have to say it does actually live up to that reputation.
Oh my goodness, yes. I think I've spent 48 hours in Wellington, and it was like gale force for 47 of the 48 hours. But Japan fared really badly in the survey as well, with airports in Sapporo, Osaka, Tokyo, and Tokonami named. So that's 5 out of the top 10 in Japan.
And the results also identified the most rocky flight routes. And in our part of the world, Brisbane to Sydney topped the list, followed by Port Vila to Auckland and Melbourne to Sydney.
Melbourne to Sydney, that's amazing because that is always in the top 3 busiest routes in the world. Maybe it's just all the aircraft jostling for gates at Sydney Airport. And Port Vila and Brisbane appear multiple times too on that list. Can you imagine though, with all that turbulence, then throw a pile of dogs and cats into the bin? Oh my goodness. That is a potential scenario as Virgin Australia intends to become the first Australian airline to allow pets in the cabin. Do they want my 2 hairy Samoyeds in there?
Well, I would actually love if we could have dogs in cabins, because when we moved to Australia, we had our dog in the cargo hold, and he was so distressed. So, and also, if you want to go on a holiday and to stay, it'd be really nice to be able to have your dog in the cabin. I'm all for dogs in the cabin. But yes, that creates quite a funny image in my mind.
You're listening to The World Awaits. We'd love it if you could leave us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform.
This week, I'm interviewing Andrew Waddel from Tourism New Zealand, who talks about Indigenous tourism, the balance of getting it right for both the tourist and the local tangata whenua, and why it's so important to help ensure New Zealand retains the travellers it so badly needs to boost the economy. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Kia ora, how are you?
Great to have you on The World Awaits. So let's start by tell us a bit about your background and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, thank you. And hello to all your listeners. Look, I think I actually joined the travel industry right from, when I was born in New Zealand, but didn't realise it till years later. So, being Kiwi, travelled a lot around New Zealand with family and friends through, school and family holidays, school and university. And many of those experiences come back later on when you work in travel. But I did get desire to travel and leave further, so I live in New Zealand. So actually left with a company called Fonterra, a New Zealand dairy board selling milk products in the UK. And left there, joined Interbrew at the time, which was Stella Artois and beer, before joining Red Bull. Had quite a few years of Red Bull, about 10 years in UK, South Africa and Australia, before joining Tourism New Zealand. And a lot of those experiences, both from growing up in New Zealand, but also living and working overseas, working on amazing lifestyle and flagship brands, are really coming back into my experience with Tourism New Zealand. So I've been with Tourism New Zealand about 6 years now, and very much weave my childhood stories as much as traveling the world, and living and working in places. I think has been a big part of my approach to travel. How do you bring to life experiences for people that represent what it's like to live in that place? And that's very much about connecting with people in place.
And not a bad brand to work with. Tourism New Zealand, having to promote New Zealand, it's not a tough job, is it?
It's a great job. Really proud of it as well. Working in the visitor economy is so much more than just, getting people to get on a plane. The role that they can play to support communities, create jobs, and really sort of advance and tell the cultural and destination stories is really significant. So the contribution of tourism to all economies is significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And Australians are New Zealand's largest market, so they make up a big portion of that significance to the economy. Besides the obvious proximity, why do you think Australians love New Zealand so much?
Australians are a really important market for New Zealand, across visiting friends and family, holiday, business, really close trading partner and close relationship. But particularly for holiday, there's real interest of what's happening next door, really, and just over the ditch or the Trans-Tasman. Australians will travel all seasons, particularly across soft peak around autumn, summer, and particularly winter, so that like the ski fields. And it's really around the diversity of offerings. So what we have is both, whether it be interest across sporting and adventure and connection with nature and, the walks and mountain biking we've got, but then also into the cultural experiences. And quite often people think of that as Indigenous cultural experiences, but there can be everything from farm experiences through to city and urban experiences as well. So what we see is a real driver to get over there for Australians, but also repeat or return visitation as well. So, I'll have an experience in the North Island and want to go to the South, or vice versa. So, a lot to offer for Australians, and very much see it as close proximity, close destination to travel to.
And one of the key differentiation factors, because obviously both of us live in Australia and are originally Kiwis, there's obviously a lot of similarities, but one of the really obvious things that is vastly different is really the cultural experiences, and particularly the Māori culture. So tell us a bit about, why and how that's evolved really over the years, and then why sort of that's so important to the mix of things when it comes to retaining and getting increasing tourism numbers in New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's evolving and will continue to evolve. Very much in New Zealand, Māori culture, Pacific Island culture, and Asian culture is intertwined and weaved into life in New Zealand. And what tourism has done is enabled to have that culture to have more of a voice. One of the things that Australians get when they land in New Zealand is, a very much sense of location and people and place, Kiwi connection, and Māori, whether it be te reo, the language, or the worldview, te ao Māori, worldview of Māori, intertwined with daily life. So, that's a part of who we are and part of our story as a country. When it comes to experiences, what's been really interesting is the development of that for local iwi or tribe, or local or Māori people, and that, those tourism allows people to tell their story, connect with, stay and live on the land, which they've got a deep connection with, and further their advancement for a sense of economic as well, because they're able to generate benefit off that, and then that contributes back to their local people as well as the community. So it's almost that circular economy piece that's really interesting. So I'd never say that it's on top of tourism or separate to, but actually the advancement is really how it's going to be continued to be intertwined. What you'll see deep, rich cultural experiences, particularly through Rotorua and some of the out north and those regions, which really tell you, the Waitangi treaty grounds as well as a good example. But also, if you're jet boating or rafting in certain different locations, whether Queenstown or Rotorua, quite often they'll integrate the worldview of Māori, so there'll be a karakia, which is a blessing of the river when they go down. They'll tell the story of the people local there, and then, you might be planting trees as a part of that, and that's very much continuation of the story of the local people and contributing back. So, I think that's really the richness of what would be termed Indigenous, cultural experiences, and just making it part of the fabric of what we do in tourism.
And how has it evolved, and how do you manage that to ensure that, because historically, and people would know who've been to New Zealand, many years ago, even say 10 years ago, that a lot of the experiences, if you go to Rotorua, for example, might be sort of a more commercialized type of interaction, that's sort of a staged kind of experience, and people are moving away from that into, I hate the word authenticity because it feels sort of overused, but into more of a genuine type of experience where they feel like they are genuinely having an interaction and also giving back to that culture. So how do we navigate that? And is that something you feel like New Zealand is doing well and has done or is doing at the moment? Is it something that's sort of obviously an ongoing process?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, it's evolved and is evolving. I think at the heart of it is actually sitting down, listening, and really just taking on board the best way to take that forward. And to your point around, there was potentially things that were caricatures or built up experiences, but the ones that are true and genuine really are coming through in the sense of from the people, for the people that tell that story. If you take someone like Rotorua, where there's Tupuia, it was set up as a original sort of protection of arts and crafts and histories and stories and language, and it's now evolved to just world-class experience where you see connection with the local land through geysers and the hot pools that are there, through to the craft of wood weaving, woodcraft, etc. So it's very much where it's come from and where it's going is where the richness is there. And that's, I think, a really important part. So sitting down, listening, hearing what the local iwi and team are bringing through, how they want to bring it through, and then having the chance and the voice to lead that, because I would say would be a big part of it. Telling that story and representing that story is really important. I'm not Māori myself, and so the continual learning process, I think, is important for that. And then understanding the deep values that sit with it. So if you take Pākehā, it's the guardianship. So really understanding what that means through the experience that they're offering, but also what that means for future experiences that they'll be developing.
And what are some of the more sort of intimate experiences that you can have, having those genuine experiences, like, things like foraging, maybe on more of a small scale, or one-on-one even? What are some of those experiences that Australians can have when they go to New Zealand to ensure that they're getting sort of a more intimate, genuine sort of cultural experience?
Yeah, like as I said, I mentioned earlier, and they've changed, the setup there where when you arrive, you have a guided tour of the location before having sort of a free roam. So that's an opportunity to get direct storytelling and as well as ask questions within that, all the way through to sort of waka tours that they have, waka being boat or canoe, that they have in Christchurch as well. And the guides that are the best parts for that immersion, because they'll certainly tell you the past, the present, and what it means for the people at that particular time. And then I'd look at it from a regional perspective. So, Northland, there's a lot of cultural experiences up around the Waitangi grounds where the treaty was signed. So there's a lot of European and Māori history within that. Museum attached to that is another good part. And then Kupe, sort of explorer, when the first Māori to arrive in New Zealand, where he landed. There's increasing sort of storytelling around that. So those are the sorts of variations that you can get. I'd always encourage to sort of look online, find those experiences through newzealand.com. If you go through that, they are very much, they're vetted. There's a good referral system there, and they're qual mark, which means the quality is also guaranteed within that. So a lot of more Māori experiences are coming through in this way.
And how does that, talking about that circular sort of system, how does that feed back into the local communities and the local iwi?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you'll get is you'll get the experience themselves that's created by the operator or iwi, as I said. They'll tell the local story, they'll employ locals within that. And usually have something that reinvests within that, both through the experience, but also back into the community. If I take an example, Kapiti Island, actually just out from where my mother lives on the Kapiti coast, long-standing marine and wildlife reserve. Locally, we there live at the end. They have live-on experience, so you can stay in the location. There's Kiwi there. And they have both day and nighttime tours of that island. So they actually manage the dock concessions on there, Department of Conservation, I should say. And so you see it, when I say circular, you've got coordination between local iwi, Department of Conservation, the local community and councils and so forth. And so someone arriving on that island will very much have that in-depth experience, but know that every dollar that's been spent there is going back into support of that community to live on that island, as well as support of nature and that, as I said, kaitiaki, that guardianship of the island as well. So it's a predator-free island, which means it's got no mammals on it, so very well protected. And so what you've got is real growth of bird life there over the last 20, 30 to 40 years. And that's very much links back to what New Zealand was like before Europeans arrived, and sort of what the future is when you're managing a governing nature these days.
And lots of tourism regions like BC and Canada are really focusing really heavily on obviously First Nations experiences and this type of thing. What do you think it is about New Zealand that because New Zealand really does and has walked the walk and is sort of known, for leading the way in these types of experiences? Why do you think that is?
I would say it's never done. There's never a completion point or never sort of an end point. I'm always very much sort of how you take knowledge from the past and then sort of invest into the future. And I think for Australians to be able to connect with that and understand it, that's an important part of Australians' journey as well, as it is in Canada and so forth. So really seeking to understand First Nations and their story with the land, their connection with the land, I think it's really important.
Where do you think, or how do you think it will evolve in the future? What does the future hold for Indigenous travel?
I think one of the really exciting pieces is around sustainability, and sustainability is a sort of word that's being put on to looking after the nature. But most Indigenous cultures have this ingrained in their values already. So I think combination of Māori storytelling, Indigenous storytelling, protection of land and guardianship of that land for better generational benefit in the future, I think is really where it's going to go. So how you see, that's going to be really important. I think what Australians or visitors to New Zealand will really seek out, how they're visiting New Zealand, how they can connect with local people, how they connect with land, how they can contribute back to it, but then also the spirit that they can take back to wherever they've travelled from. And potentially, use that to inform how they live their lives, every day.
And living in Australia now, what are some of your favourite things to do when you go back?
It's very fortunate that close proximity. I'm able to be over in a couple of hours. Obviously, seeing friends and family is a big part of it. I've actually just got back from New Zealand. Had 3 days mountain biking in Queenstown and Wanaka. And then flew up to Auckland, had a couple of days in Auckland, went out to the western coast of Auckland, so Piha, and so forth. So, anything to do with nature is definitely a key part of it. And combining that with a bit of adventure is definitely something what I love.
Yeah, me too. I went to Waiheke Island in December and did some hiking, and absolutely loved it. Absolutely love it. But there are plenty of other places in New Zealand to hike, that's for sure. Right. Well, we're running out of time, so I'll ask you the question we ask all of our interviewees, which is, what's the most bizarre thing that's happened to you during your travels?
Oh, thank you. Look, it's isn't travelling special when you've got so many of these rich memories to bring through. Look, the one that stands out for me is a New Zealand special. It's heartfelt in that it was the first time I was taking my girlfriend, now wife, back to New Zealand. Had this amazing plan all set out, take it around New Zealand and honestly show it off. I think what I was trying to do. She's British, first time to New Zealand, and first 48 hours were pretty special. I won't go into all the detail, but one of the things put out was got to Queenstown, and we jumped in a charter plane across to Milford Sounds. If you're aware of Milford Sounds, a very dramatic scenery. There's a little plane going over the top down Milford Sound and back. Met a friend at the wharf after we'd landed in Milford Sound and went out on his boat, and fortunate to be diving and fishing for a couple of hours on a friend's boat. And we got back to the wharf after a great day and actually hadn't caught anything, which was a little bit odd. And my friend Simon, his father, Mike, took off for a little bit, and while we were waiting for them to sort of head back to their farm, they came back with a big sack. And when we inquired about what was in the sack, they had got 12 crayfish. And when we said, well, how? They'd traded a sheep or bartered a sheep from their farm for 12 crayfish. So everyone won. We got crayfish to eat later on that evening. And the fishermen, having mostly fish all the time. Well, so within a few days getting into New Zealand, we were at a friend's farm, having a great day at Milford Sound, eating crayfish tails. It's very much, the spirit that we show, the generosity and hospitality. And while I was probably excited about showing them Milford Sound, and dramatic scenery. It was actually the connection with the people and place that really should, we talk about afterwards. And, that's very much an expression of what it's like to travel to New Zealand.
And having fun, being able to trade a sheep. Oh, great. All right. Look, thank you so much. It's been fantastic chatting with you today.
Thank you very much.
I found that so interesting, particularly at a time when everyone seems to talk about investing in Indigenous tourism, but few actually walk the walk like New Zealand does. Our tip this week comes from iconic travel photographer Steve McCurry, who, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is currently exhibiting in Melbourne. He focuses on disappearing cultures and climate change, both incredibly dramatic subjects.
And for those who want to attempt to get really, truly great travel shots, Steve has some tips to help ensure you leave your holiday capturing the moment in a unique and memorable way.
At the exhibition, Steve shares a lot of his photography experiences, but the advice that really stuck with me was just to keep walking outside your hotel door and simply start exploring. Just get out and shoot and keep shooting, he says. Try to get lost and suddenly the magic will happen when you relax, you're observant, and you start seeing pictures. He describes it as almost being in a meditative state, which is when the good pictures come. It's serendipitous, it's all chance encounters, it's not planned, it's just open, and you're not trying to force the situation. You're just letting it wash over you.
He also said some of the great pictures actually happen along the journey, so not actually when you're actually at the destination. So consider what you can shoot and your surroundings along the way. And he says always be ready because you never know what you might come across that'll make a great shot.
And remember the photographer's saying, the best camera for the job is the camera you have in your hand. And that, for most of us, is our mobile phones.
You're listening to The World Awaits. We'd love it if you could leave us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform.
Next week, tune in as I talk trains with certified train spotter and travel writer Tim Richards. Tim, who is the author of several books about his global train adventures, might help you put you on the right track, boom boom, with choosing your own epic train journeys.
And if you'd like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee at coffee.com/theworldawaits, ko-fi.com/theworldawaits, so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Writes on Instagram. That's KIRSTIE Writes, WRITES. And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.